Many car dealers are refusing to take many cars in on trade today for fear of obsolete electrical equipment, mechanical failures that are well known, and very expensive costs to even refresh and refurb many of these vehicles. I've put together a list of some of the worst, most problematic technologies on the market today and some of the worst vehicles that they wouldn't touch with a 100-foot pole. Let's get into it now. One of the features that many car dealers are avoiding are some of the early hybrids. Many of the early high voltage and plug-in hybrid vehicles. Unfortunately, a lot of these products are proprietary, so they can't fix them themselves. Many of them will only last for about 8, 9, 10 years before full battery replacements. Battery replacements that could cost anywhere from $6,000 to $20,000. Battery control modules from $1,400 to about $4,000. And cooling system components could cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 alone on their own. Once you have to replace a set of batteries, it's going to exceed the value of that car, meaning it's virtually throwaway. So when we consider the fact that many of these parts are extremely expensive and many other secondary owners don't want them either, what do you think the dealer wants to do? Avoid them like the plague, and that's why you're going to struggle trying to trade these vehicles in. They don't want them. One of the vehicles would be a BMW i3, which runs from 2014 to about 2018. A lot of the problems, proprietary systems, expensive EV components, as well as battery degradation. The worst part is many dealers simply know that the end is near for many of these batteries. And for BMWs of this generation, you're pretty much right on the cusp of having to replace a $20,000 battery pack or even a $7,000 electrical component. This unfortunately means that you're not going to be unloading your BMW i3 anytime soon. When you bought that car, did you know that was a financial commitment for life? A lot of people don't want to own them, and certainly dealers know all about these. They don't want to touch them with a 100-foot pole. Second one is a 2011 to 2015 Chevy Volt. Many of the issues with the Chevy Volt stem from control module failures up to $4,000 or $5,000, full battery replacement for $10,000 to $20,000, and the fact that independent shops can't fix them, that means you're tethered to the Chevy service department. A lot of these cars are obsolete and they were cheap to begin with, means that by the time you throw a battery in them, they far exceeded the value on the used market. No dealer wants to touch those either because it's just too much risk. Third vehicle is the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. The problem with these is batteries, modules, cooling system, and even cooling system sensor failure seems to be a common thread for some of these vehicles. But on top of the battery deterioration, let's talk about faulty inverters and faulty charge systems, which just constantly throws dollars at. Most people who are driving electric vehicles these days tout them as having low service and maintenance costs. Right, until things break. And the fact that you can't touch any of it with yourself in your own hands means you've got to drag it off to the dealer and get them to fix it and replace components. You can't troubleshoot these vehicles anymore. And repair costs, any ranging from $6,000 to $15,000, means a lot of these repairs are going to grossly exceed the value of the vehicle. With a cheap vehicle initially as an MSRP that was barely over those numbers, you better believe that these cars will easily obsolete themselves in a heartbeat. The second design in a vehicle that a lot of dealers tread very cautiously with are vehicles that have air suspension systems. You know, Airmatic in the Mercedes-Benz. In the BMW, we had self-leveling systems in our X5 as well, and we saw 2 failures. I had to actually replace airbags on both failure modes, and eventually I just decided to throw in the towel and I just retrofitted it to coil springs. Because if you're getting the dealer to replace a lot of these ends, you're going to spend thousands of dollars. You can see problems with the bags, compressor, leveling switches, as well as air blocks. There's a whole host of different components, and any one of them can fail. Some are cheaper, some are more expensive. It's more complexity that nobody signed up for. It rides great when they're brand new, but when they fail, ouch, it hurts. The worst problem is, if you have a leak somewhere or a failed airbag or some other component failure, it just cascades. See, because if you have a leaking airbag, that means now the air compressor has to constantly feed air to pump that up. So as soon as you turn on the ignition, the air compressor's running, whereas a properly sealed system, it wouldn't. It would rarely run the compressor. But once it's leaking, it's running the compressor all the time. So now you've got bad bags, you've got bad air compressor coming in soon, and it's just going to be a cascading effect of massively expensive repairs. Air springs can cost you anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 a corner. The air compressor anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500. And if you have to do the full corners because for some reason you've got a system that's been that badly neglected or abused, well, you can expect to spend anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 retrofitting your suspension system. That's painful, and dealers know it. And anytime they see a premium vehicle from Germany, they look and tread very cautiously. Because the first vehicle is a 2017 to 2023 Audi Q7, where you get sensor issues, ride height issues. Any one of them can fail, and it can cost you up to $10,000 to repair. Second one is a Mercedes-Benz GLS from 2017 to 2019, and they have the airmatic system, which can blow out at any point, with airmatic failures, leaking struts, and even an air compressor that will fail too. And this collection of failures can cost you as much as $3,000 to as much as $8,000 just to retrofit this Q7 problems. But guess what? There's a third one, and we're talking about Range Rover. Because Range Rovers from 2013 to 2021 seemed particularly susceptible for valve block issues, compressor problems, leaky corners. It's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars if a lot of the system is starting to fail. The airbags fail, then they run too long with the air compressor, that eventually burns out, and then the valve blocks can go too. So it's not a cheap vehicle to own and operate. The third one is early generations of the dual clutch transmissions. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Sure, you see them in Ferraris and McLarens. Why not put them in everyday vehicles? Until they started breaking, and that's the big issue, because with multiple computerized clutches, electro-hydraulic mechatronics, as well as expensive calibration means you're never short on looking for something to do to keep them running right. Typical failures can be clutch packs, mechatronics, input shafts, as well as bearings. And the dual transmissions, as fast as they are at shifting and as wonderful as they are to drive when they're new, wait till they start howling, making noises, missing shifts, or not operating at all. That's when you can start experiencing repair costs from $6,000 to $15,000 depending on the vehicle. The first one is a Ford Focus from 2012 to about 2018. We're talking about the power shift transmission. It was their attempt at a dry type dual clutch gearbox, and again, it worked well for a very short period of time, and then people started noting juddering, kicking, bucking, and outright failure to the tune of up to $6,000 to $8,000 to retrofit a transmission. For a Ford? The Ford Fiesta was the second one from similar years, 2011 to about 2019, suffered the same problems with a power shift transmission. Same issues, juddering, poor driving ability, and just the fact that it just didn't like to last all that long. It overheated, the clutches melted down, and next thing you know, you had a transmission that was nothing more than a big hunk of metal. The third is the Volkswagen Golf GTI from 2015 to 2018, and they actually had a dual clutch gearbox. And while Volkswagen's early DSG system was proven to be even slightly more reliable than Ford's, it still didn't come without its problems. They didn't last a whole long time, and while they worked wonderfully, they just didn't have the robustness that you can expect from a lot of the older Volkswagen products, which were known to go hundreds of thousands of miles. But this was sort of ushering in the introduction to the new technology and the new direction for the brand, which meant efficiency, performance, but let's throw out reliability, because clutch wear, expensive servicing, and mechatronics meant that you could spend as much as $5,000 to $8,000 on significant failure points for these DSGs. The fourth technology that a lot of car dealers are really skeptical when they see small turbocharged engine, often direct fuel injected, and even more importantly coming from Europe, they shudder, they run scared, they're fearful of the sheer cost and magnitude of the expense to rectify some of the problems related to small turbocharged engines that happen to be direct fuel injected and generally don't have a great reputation for durability. Turbocharger and wastegate replacement might cost you $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. And timing change, stretch, or even guides mean that sometimes on a startup you get that grring, a very mechanical sound like dragging cans through a garbage can. Very worrisome and could cost you $2,000 to $4,000. Carbon fouling on the intake as well, which means you may need to perform some walnut blasting or intake valve maintenance. Cooling leaks, because now you're putting more cooling system through turbos and many of the other components which didn't exist 10 or 15 years earlier. And unfortunately, many of these vehicles now with lower compression piston rings and many of the other problems with the PCVs and EGRs and high stressed out engines with turbocharging means often oil consumption's a major problem. Extra heat under the hood means they're starting to burn a little oil a little sooner. One of the worst vehicles in this space happens to be the BMW X5 from 2009 to about 2018, and even worse with the N63. That's their 4.4 liter twin turbo V8. Lots of problems because of the two turbos down in the V created all this extra heat. Now that heat transferred to wiring, plastic components, valve guide wear, which led to premature oil consumption, coolant pipes starting to leak, timing chains piling up, and a whole host of very expensive parts to replace because a lot of the parts under the hood of these vehicles were made of plastic. As a matter of fact, BMW went through a whole host of customer care programs just to satisfy a lot of customers who own these vehicles with relatively short mileage, and they were starting to sustain major expensive repairs, engine failures to be honest. The worst part with all this complexity and high-strung engines, many BMW owners sustained repairs in that $10,000 to $20,000 range, which meant many dealers are really shy to own these vehicles. The Audi Q5 from 2009 to 2016 are another problematic unit with heavy oil consumption, turbo failures, timing chain tensioners. That E888 engine was a real problem for many years. And with these Audis, repairs could exceed even $10,000. So again, many of these German import vehicles, once they sustain 60, 70,000 miles, most dealers don't even want to touch them. They just know it's way too much risk for catastrophic engine failures or expensive maintenance repairs. Even if they've got to get them on a maintenance regime, they see a car that maybe has been neglected maintenance, they know that they're going to have to pour thousands of dollars just to refresh it and recondition that vehicle just to make it ready for sale. The third is the 2017 to 2019 Ford Escape. You'd get coolant migrating its way into the combustion chamber. Problem area there. And in the worst case scenario, so are turbos, wastegates, and complete engine replacement because of the coolant intrusion. Coolant, oil, none of it mixes very well. And when you all start blending it together, it starts breaking down seals, gaskets, O-rings, and everything starts to leak, and you might as well throw the car in the trash bin. Those cars weren't worth much to begin with because many of these repairs cost anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 on a Ford. The fifth one is essentially electronic tech. We're seeing a lot of these in these modern day EVs and a lot of vehicles in general, which were integrating a lot of their controls into a big center screen. Nobody asked for that. Nobody wants it because there's almost hundreds of different control modules. They often use proprietary software, which leaves your hands off and you're at the mercy of the dealer to repair it. Integrated touchscreens, cellular connectivity, which all seems fun for the first 3 years. And when it fails, yeah, look out. The big problem with these vehicles and why many dealers refuse to take these on trade is simply obsolescence, designed obsolescence. These vehicles won't go much more than 5 to 8 years before those modules, those touchscreens, and those knobs and buttons that are specifically electronic by nature are all obsolete. You can't get replacement parts, and the next generation of touchscreen is just around the corner. Cellular hardware can be obsolete that's integrated into these vehicles. Replacements often need the dealer to get involved, and some features even stop working after the network sunsets. In other words, once they switch over to a new revision, a new software type or protocol, say bye-bye to that module or that touchscreen or that component because it no longer is compatible with the newer upgraded system. They want you to trade it up. And the dealers know this. They know exactly which vehicles you don't want to have and which ones they definitely don't want to take in on trade. Infotainment modules, when they fail, could be $2,000 to $5,000. Instrument clusters may cost you $4,000 to $5,000 if they crap out. And the ADAS camera systems, the driver aid systems, if that fails, needs a recalibration, replacement, you could spend as much as $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 replacing that. Since when do you have to change and recalibrate your ADAS system just because you change a windshield? Well, yeah, I'm sure you've had that experience and so have I. But this is just the way the market's headed. The first model susceptible to some of these problem areas is 2012 to 2018 Tesla Model S. They can see the MCU failures, the older outdated cellular systems and hardware obsolete, and the MMC memory wear, which can cause screen failures. As an example, an MCU repair upgrade could cost you as much as $4,000. And unfortunately, this is another one of those vehicles that you almost have to go directly to Tesla. There's really no other competition, and unfortunately, you're at the mercy of technology and the vendor. The second one is the 2014 to 2016 Cadillac ELR. Unfortunately, they have limited production, part scarcity, and unique electronic modules that you just can't find anymore. They're essentially obsolete. And just to get parts for these vehicles, it often means long wait times, parking your dealer in the back of the dealer network shop for months on end, waiting for that part to come in if you can find one at all. It becomes inconvenient, costly, and honestly just frustrating. Many dealers don't even want to touch these. I've even talked to Cadillac dealers themselves who don't even want these vehicles around anymore. They're just not worth the hassle, and many dealers dealers just won't take these on trade unless you virtually give it away. Another one is Jaguar I-Pace. From 2019 to about 2022, they have their own host of issues, and rebranding is just the beginning of their problems. Complex electronic architecture and expensive module replacements, meaning that amongst the many dozens of modules, any one of them could cost you as much as $2,000 to $6,000, not just to replace and to calibrate. They're not cheap vehicles to run, and the future shows that a lot of these EVs are very much tied directly to the vendors, and that's a big part of the problem. Most EVs these days are heavily integrated with electronic screens, touch screens, knobs and buttons are almost a thing of the past, and the more electronics means the more you're tied to the dealer, and also means the closer to obsolescence you're likely to be. Many of these vehicles I've mentioned, amongst many others, are vehicles that the dealers simply don't want ever to take on a trade. Be sure to check out these videos. You're going to love that. And I hope to see each and every one of you. As soon as you hit that membership program, support ECPP, that would be great. We'll talk to you all real soon, everybody. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.